Hi there. The other day, I was talking with a woman I know who turned in her resignation for the company that she was with. She had gotten another job in another firm, doing the same kind of work, managing fewer clients and making more money. And her the company that she resigned from was surprised that she had left. And she told me that, and I laughed. I'm like, "Oh yes, so surprised that you were being overworked and underpaid, and you wanted to leave. Why is that?" That mentality of we can treat our employees like shit and they still want to work for us is a little ridiculous. And yet a lot of companies are still doing that. There was one company that when I resigned from there, they were shocked that I was leaving because they hadn't laid me off during the recession, even though they laid off like a huge percentage of the staff. I happened to be lucky enough to stay. It wasn't, you know, it was luck. I mean, some skill. I mean, I provided value, but I could have just as easily been one of those people who were let go because they also provided value. And so I was just supposed to have this unending loyalty to this company because I didn't get laid off during the mid 2000s recession. And I just remember thinking that is just so strange, this corporate mentality of what you owe to your company. And it seems to be everything. You get your job and you get a paycheck, which is for the work that you're doing. And yet you are supposed to sacrifice all of your extra time, work late, be available, fit in, go to, unpaid events, the whole thing. And I was thinking about all those things that we sometimes believe, or certainly that I believed are true about working anywhere, really. So one is that loyalty is deserved. Like, we gave you a job, we owe you owe us. No, I owe you the work that you're paying me for. That's what I owe. Everything else is mine to do with what I please. A lot of companies have this employer-employee hierarchy, which makes sense. But then they act like they're a family. And that's great, I guess, if you have a functional family and you're like, wonderful, a family. The thing is, companies can't be functional families. I mean, they might actually be families and family businesses, but when you have a company or an organization where someone can just like let you go because they decided they didn't like something that you did, that's not a family dynamic. I mean, it is a family dynamic, a dysfunctional family dynamic, but most people don't want to join a dysfunctional family, especially if they're coming from one. But that whole family idea is what makes that appealing, is because we think it's a functional family, but often it is not, because there's still that hierarchy. There's still that level of control that someone else has over your livelihood. And they take advantage of that. I mean, that's certainly true in some families. People take advantage of each other, and they know how to guilt you. That's sure true in companies too. Because I got a lot of that with you still have your job. So that's just like this idea that not only is your loyalty deserved, and you're joining this family, but they can kick you out whenever they want. So the loyalty and the family part only goes one way. And then the other thing is that, that the company culture or the company fit, we hire for fit. Well, that's great. But if that's what you're hiring for, very often you're going to get a lot of people who are exactly the same, because people who are truly diverse aren't going to fit exactly. That's the whole reason you have diversity. Not that it's going to be antagonistic, but you have to have this interplay of ideas and thought and experience, and that's not always going to fit. It's going to bump into each other, and then you have to have conversations like adults, and nobody wants to do that. So the idea that you have to fit this culture in order to get hired. So you could be an excellent person for this company, you could like rock this position, it's something that but because maybe you don't want to play beer pong on the weekends with all of your colleagues, you don't fit the company culture, and so it's limiting for the company, but they think that they're great because they have a kegerator. And so they've got a great company culture. Companies don't get to decide they have a great culture. That's the employees who get to decide that they have a great culture. And what I've seen in a lot of companies is that it's just not there. And that's not to say that all companies are bad. I mean, there's certainly and counter to that example I gave where I was supposed to be loyal to a company because they didn't fire me during a recession. I worked for a small firm, and I was young in my career. I was maybe 23, 24, and I was out on a job site by myself with a potential client, and he started saying some things that made me really uncomfortable and made me feel really vulnerable to realize that I was like out in the woods by myself with this person who I didn't really know. And so when I got back and I was talking to my boss about how the site visit went and the scope of the project, and it would have been a sizable project for this company, and I said, if we get this project, can one of the other staff work on it because this happened and I was really uncomfortable with this person. And his response was, well, no, we're not even going to submit a proposal to that guy. I don't want to work for someone, work with someone like that. And that is what inspires loyalty, that caring about your people in the same way that you would care about anybody in your actual family. They didn't call it, it was a family business for them, but they didn't hype this whole thing up about we're a family here. It was a family business and I worked for it, but it was just a different thing. I think that's maybe the key is if someone else is describing themselves to you as a particular thing, they're probably not, because you don't have to explain that to people. It just kind of comes out and exudes from just the atmosphere. So at any rate, I would have moved across the country to work for him again if the opportunity had arisen, and circumstances had worked out. That's loyalty. That's someone that I know I want to work with again, or at least keep contact with, or has made an impact in my life, because I've told that story many times before. And that is what good relationships are like, because he didn't treat me as just some employee who was going to be making him money. He treated me like a person who was uncomfortable in a situation that I was rightly uncomfortable in. And so what I'm getting at here is that it's not all companies, but a lot of them are struggling to figure out how to balance all of these things, because they're just not set up to be that way. They're set up to be very hierarchical, and you have to report up, and then depending on who, whether it's a public company or not, they're beholden to investors, or even if they're a private company, they're beholden to investors. But so the flexibility and their ability to do things that are in the best interest of their people could be limited, or often are limited. And so there are companies that are making changes and that are good to work for, and that won't suck your soul out, and acknowledge that you're a human being with value, and that you are helping the company meet their mission and help whoever they're helping and serving whoever they're serving. But that and it does feel more like a team. But there are so many places that are lacking, and it can feel like either I'm never going to find something where I feel like I fit, because I don't ever feel like I fit. I mean, I've got so many stories about not fitting in into engineering. Even though I was good at it, I just always kind of I was, back when I started, it was still very male dominated field. I was working in states that were still very male dominated, especially in engineering. And, so you'd have to play the game and laugh at the stupid jokes, and, wear the appropriate clothes, not too manly, but not too feminine. And you gotta, there's this crazy line that you've got to walk, and it's always changing. Don't uptuck, don't, what's the other one? Vocal fry, don't share too much about your family, but don't be cold. Don't, this impossible standard. And at some point, and I kept trying, and at some point I was like, they're just going to tell me I need to turn into like an old man, and then I'll be accepted. But that's not what's going to happen. And so I think, well, really, what am I getting at? Getting at that a lot of work sucks, and it sucks for reasons that are so stupid, like like things that we learned in kindergarten, like treat each other with respect. I mean, that's what my son is learning a lot in school. They're focusing on grace and courtesy, and with yourself and to others. And that's just missing in a lot of workplaces. Someone passes away and they're like, oh, well, they weren't a close enough person that you can take bereavement leave. Or, we need proof that they died. It's like, who says that to another human being? So at any rate, what I'm getting at is that there are opportunities out there. It's not just, there aren't just terrible companies, although they do seem like they're frequent, or have had a lot of exposure to them. But there are ways that you can take back control of that, either by finding a place that really does mesh with your ambitions and goals and beliefs and respects you as a human being, or you can start your own thing. And I know that sounds scary, and there are a lot of things about it that are a little scary, but it's not terrible. And chances are, if you're working for someone else, they're expecting you to work as hard as if you earned or owned the company, and they're not paying you anywhere near like the owners of the company. So if you're going to work that hard, maybe you should think about exploring at least what options are out there and what you could do, because there's so many ways to be creative about how you earn your living now. And the people who are taking advantage of it and that I talk to, they're so much happier, and they don't deal with that bullshit because they don't have to, because they don't have to work with companies that treat people like that, or with other people who treat people like that. Like the moment you're a business owner, it puts you on this peer level, and you're like, I'm not doing that. So, thanks, but no thanks. And that is a really good feeling. And also just, the flexibility and freedom that you have. So I'm going to be sharing some more about that in the coming weeks, and I'm really excited about it. It's not for everybody, but for a lot of people who don't fit the regular corporate mold, it's a really good option. And if you're curious, I'd love for you to follow along.